Okay, folks, welcome. We're going to get started here. Welcome to our presentation on the introduction to Microsoft Teams. My name is Jeff Napolitano. I am a staff member with the Partnership for Worker Education. I am joined by a couple of my colleagues who are listed as panelists, Sonia Lindop and Jacob Carter. They're going to help me wrangle the questions and answers that people ask. We have a lot of people who have registered for this webinar, and so a lot of the usual functionality that you see in Microsoft Teams is disabled. And instead, down at the bottom, the most pertinent buttons that you have to operate are the Q&A button, and that's basically it. Chat is disabled at the moment, but if you have questions, there's a box that you can ask them through at the bottom of the Zoom screen. This is going to be about a 45-minute presentation. We are going to try to hold as many questions to the end. Sonia is going to interject in the middle if there's an obvious question or a point that I skipped over in this introduction to Teams. But otherwise, we're going to have time at the end to go through questions. And so if you can, just to manage the sheer number of folks who are here and have questions, if you could try to hold your questions until the end, that'd be great. As we go through this, I will be addressing many of the questions that some of you had posed during the Q&A. During the registration. So when a lot of folks signed up, you had asked questions about Microsoft Teams, and integrated the answers of some of those questions into our presentation here. So I want to just bring up our brief agenda. Let's see. So we're going to go over all of this, what is Teams, what isn't Teams, using the web app versus the installed version on your computer, using it in your department, and we'll actually have a poll for all of you to take in about 5 minutes. And then we're going to go over the Teams dashboard, and largely that means going over the navigation sidebar, which is basically your introduction and your guide to everything that's involved in Teams. We'll touch on the activity feed, the chat, the Teams, which is the meat of this piece of software, the calendar, calls, filing. So all of the basic functionality of Teams we're going to go through over the course of the next 40 minutes. And again, at the end, what I'll do is take questions from folks. And if we don't get to all of your questions, we are going to post the questions and the answers on the website for the Partnership for Worker Education. And that's umass.edu/worker-ed. Everybody who registered is going to get an email when that video and the questions and answers are posted on our site. So if we don't get to all of your questions, we will get to the answers on our website at the very least. Okay. So, going through the very basics of what Teams is. So let me share my screen here. Okay, so this is the basic dashboard for Microsoft Teams. We're going to go through all of this functionality, as I mentioned. Right over here on the left side of the screen is the navigation sidebar. We're going to go through all of these. Teams tries to be not necessarily a new piece of software with anything radically improved functionality. What it is really a consolidation of all of the different tools within Microsoft Office. Not just within Office, but also integrating things like video conferencing, like Zoom, taking the chat paradigms and notification paradigms of like Twitter and Facebook. And it tries to basically bundle it into one place so that if you're working in an office, all of the tools that you need in order to get your work done are available to you right in front of you. And so it isn't necessarily anything new. It's just the mechanism through which all of the different office tools that you might use are put into one place. And it adds some additional functionality, which is, I think, pretty useful. And I'm usually a Microsoft skeptic. I'll also be saying probably over and over in this presentation and likely in some of the questions and answers is that it's an extension of Outlook and Exchange. So if you are using, and I presume that most everybody is using their Microsoft, their UMass NetID email account, then there's going to be a seamless integration with Microsoft Teams. You'll log into Microsoft Teams and you'll see your entire calendar integrated under Calendar, for instance. That's really the point of Teams, is to bring all the functionality and all the different applications that you use under one place. I had somebody ask in the registration, do I have to be a member of Teams? Do I have to sign up and so forth? The answer is you already are. If you have a NetID, if you are using your UMass email, if you are using your Outlook calendar, you have a login to Teams. It's the same as with almost everything at UMass as your NetID and your password. And so Teams is usually, if you're using a university computer, already preloaded, and you just have to log in once and basically you're all set. I also have the question, the issue of a web app versus the Macintosh version versus the PC version. Now I know that most people have the PCs through UMass, but in reality, it's almost identical, if not exactly identical, whether you're using a Mac or a PC or even the web application, which means that you can launch Microsoft Teams in a web browser. As with much of the Microsoft suite that we have available to us at UMass, all you have to do is go to portal.office.com if you don't have any of these things installed on your computer, and you can use your NetID to log in and use virtually every piece of software. There's a question, is Office 365 required? And again, this is part of Office 365. If you are a UMass staff member, you have a subscription to Office 365, you're already basically using it by using Outlook in your Exchange email account. And so this is all integrated. It's all basically the same thing. Okay, so I have a question for everybody. And it is a poll question because in launching the registration and reading some of the questions, I'm suspecting that most people aren't already using Teams, which is why you're here, which is perfectly fine. So I'm going to launch a poll. Is your department actively using Microsoft Teams? I'll give it just a few seconds. And yes, I will speak louder if this is any better. Okay. So the results of the poll, most are not using Microsoft Teams at the moment, which is what I suspected. 7% of people have no idea, which is totally understandable. And yeah, some of you are using it. And so I'd actually be curious after the presentation and maybe doing Q&A about people's experiences within their departments of using Teams, and particularly if you have any questions or problems or issues with it. Let's move on to get into this. All right, so I'm gonna take the order of the navigation sidebar here on the left a little bit out of order. We're not going to go strictly to there's a little window here. That's a problem with my Zoom. Let me just make sure that that's cleared up. 1 second. Of course, my Zoom. Let's see. Sorry about this. Okay, going back to Teams. I'm going to take this a little bit out of order. I'm actually going to start with calls because it's sort of the most common, or it might be, you might find it to be the most commonly used part of Teams, but it's also a part that's integrated with every other aspect of Teams. Basically, with all of the other functionality that you have in Teams, you can use calls in all of it, and I'll show how that works in just a second. Let's see. I'm trying to enlarge the screen view, but that's the best I can do at the moment. Let's see. Okay, so for calls, again, I'm going to be saying this over and over again. Let me start by saying, how did I get to this screen? So I launched Teams in my start menu, and I can't show this to you on Zoom, but if you're on a Mac, you go to Launchpad, you find and launch Teams. You'll be presented with this window if you've already logged in. If you haven't, you'll get a login window, and you won't ever have the login again after you log in just once.
Can I add one little thing, Jeff?
Yes.
If you're in your laptop and you're working from a UMass laptop, where do you find Teams? So how do I know if I have Teams installed in my laptop?
Right. So if you're using a laptop from UMass, it should be pre-installed on your computer. And so I was actually just talking with somebody yesterday who didn't even realize that they have Teams installed and launched on their laptop. So if you're using a UMass computer at home, then all you have to do is go to on Windows, go to the Start menu and just find or type in Teams into the program search, and it'll pop up. So just click it, Teams will come up. You'll may be presented with the login screen, but if you're using UMass's VPN, like the global network, then you're likely already logged in. So you'll get this window when you start Microsoft Teams. That's for PCs, which I believe the majority of folks are using, but it's basically the same on a Mac as well. So under calls, and I'm going to be saying this over and over again, you'll find that all of your contacts, all of the aspects of your Outlook account, your email account are all already integrated. So when you go to your contacts, you should be able to start by finding anybody. So I actually see that Susan LaPlante has asked a question. I suspect if I type in Susan, okay, actually it isn't integrated here. Let's see. Okay, there's Jacob. Let's see. I'm actually not, let's see. Well, this was working yesterday, but your global contact list should be integrated in here. And I promise you it was working yesterday. And so that anytime that you have any contact within UMass, it should actually find any contact here in your contact list. It does integrate, it uses the same global address book as your Outlook account. So you can find contacts through here, and you have this cool voicemail functionality that I'll get to in a second. When you actually have a contact that you wish to call, there are two options that you have to do so. You have video call or you have a audio call. And the cool thing about Teams is that it actually minimizes the amount of invasiveness into your personal life, in that a call that you make to somebody, you don't need to know anybody's cell phone. You just need to have their contact in your Outlook account. And you can call them, you can video conference them just by, in this case, clicking video call or clicking audio call. If you make a call, it goes to that person's Outlook account. So for instance, if in Outlook, in your calendar, you say, well, I'm busy right now, I'm doing X, Y, or Z, and you have it says that you're already in a meeting, the call will actually automatically go into voicemail. And what that means is you'll have voicemail that shows up here in your voicemail account. And people can leave a message through their computer, either video conferencing or an audio call through this call functionality. And so make the call through your computer, it doesn't go to anybody's actual phone. I'll show you one example of this. Yesterday, because I'm in Zoom, I can't actually make a live call. It will screw up the screen. But let me show you one instance of me actually making a call and just going to voicemail just yesterday. So it looks like this. You get an email in your account if somebody misses you and leaves a voicemail. So I called the Community at Works account, and it actually transcribed the video call, or rather the phone call that I made. And hopefully you're going to be able to hear it here.
Hello, Community Works. This is an example of a voicemail that is left by sending a call that goes unanswered in Microsoft Teams. Call me back.
So the transcription isn't perfect, but when you make a call in Teams, it does leave a transcribed audio file in your email. This isn't like the most the biggest request. This isn't the biggest feature in Teams, but it's sort of cool. Particularly now that everybody is at home working, or most people are at home and working from home. You don't have to worry about trying to track down somebody's home phone number or their cell phone. This is all contained with the Microsoft Outlook Exchange system. And so if you're using, again, Outlook or Exchange, then you're already sort of wrangled into the entire Teams paradigm. Okay, so that was the call functionality, and it's really straightforward. Incidentally, I didn't show an example of a video call because I can't really do it during Zoom, but a video call in Microsoft Teams is actually more seamless, particularly with all of the other Microsoft Office things that you're using, whether you're in Outlook or Word or whatever, than Zoom is generally. And that's what Microsoft Teams tries to be, is essentially a one-stop shop for all of the different tools that you need in order to do work in the office. So that's calls.
Hey, Jeff, may I add one thing about calls before we move? Yep. Two quick questions that I keep on seeing. One is, are you calling a landline from Microsoft Teams? And do I need my cell phone so people can call me to my cell phone?
Right. So the answer is no in both cases. It doesn't call an actual phone. There is that functionality in Teams, but UMass IT, probably wisely, has disabled that. Otherwise, you could actually go here to the bottom of the screen and make a call or a video call to an actual cell phone or an actual phone line. These don't actually go at UMass. They don't go to phone lines. They actually go to your Outlook account. And so, unfortunately, or fortunately, you can't connect them to your campus phone, at least not right now. And again, it's maybe fortunate, maybe it's unfortunate, based upon how invasive you want the office environment to be. So it all gets rerouted through the Outlook system. It's not connected to phone lines. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to touch on, and it's going to be real quick, is on the navigation bar, the assignments tab. And the real quick thing about this is it's basically not functional here at UMass. This functionality has been disabled by IT, but that's because it's just largely not applicable to our work in the office, because it's largely geared towards classrooms, teachers, and students. I have had people ask in the registration questions about workflow management or project management software. You might think that intuitively under assignments is where it would go, but that's actually not true. It's actually run through additional app functionality, which we're going to get to very shortly. So the crux of it is that assignments is not very useful for us here. Now I'm going to go on the navigation sidebar to Teams. And so most people you should have at least one team under your Teams button here. For me, the one that I had installed for me when I was already, when I opened up Teams for the first time, is my department team, which is the Partnership for Worker Education. And so if I click on Manage Team, I see who the members of the team are, and some additional information that we're going to go into. So the big aspect of Teams, and I'm going to hit on this a couple of times, is the issue of channels. So every team, and by that you can basically substitute department, has channels. And every team has a general channel. And the general channel is where everybody in your department is, or at least should be, listed. And so under my department, the Partnership for Worker Education, we have general, in which a whole bunch of stuff happens in this main screen here. And we'll get to all of the different things you can do in this main screen. But the crux of Teams is that there's the general channel, and then there's additional channels that may be organized however you want in your department. They may be, in the case of the Partnership for Worker Education, we have a channel regarding ESOL classes. That's something that Sonia works on. We have a channel on Community Works. That's my project, and I haven't filled anything in it yet. We have the Career Ladders project within our department. And so there are channels that are dedicated to each of these things. You can think of these things as groups or rooms, basically, within your department. The important part about channels is that they select an audience for you. So, the general channel for your department is everybody in your department, or at least it should be. But then if you had individual projects like Career Ladders or Community Works or whatever you have in your department, or any divisions within your department, you want to have all of the members in that particular channel be relevant to what the work that you do is. Because channels are a way, like permissions or share settings in Google Drive or in Box or in any sort of management software that you have, they're a way of selecting an audience. And so we're going to get to examples of sharing stuff within different channels. But basically, when you create a channel, whatever you do in that channel is available and able to be seen by everybody within that channel. Similarly, if you share files or you like up here in the general channel, I created this poll, a form with a poll in it. So everything is visible to all of the members of an individual channel. Okay. Let's see. All right. I'm going to go to an example. I created a team just for this webinar, Jeff's example team. There's the general team, but then I created a couple of other channels. Every channel has 3 pieces of functionality. They have posts at the top, which is if I want to type something, if I want to send a message, I can send something in here. I can also tag people. And so this is a way to get somebody's attention. So let's say, I'm gonna say, okay, Sonia, this is a project that I'm working on. And so this starts a conversation to which anybody within the channel can reply, but it specifically tags Sonia. This is very similar to like Facebook. If somebody tags you on Facebook or on Twitter, Teams uses these paradigms of social media and brings it into this sort of office setting. I'm going to show you a little bit later how that goes into activities. And how every time that somebody sends you a post or tags you, it goes, you will get a notification about that. And so it's a way to basically have a conversation within a department or within a team. So that's the posts functionality. Then there's files, and this is another one of the more useful parts of Teams, is that it's a way to collaborate on documents. So I'm going to go to my webinar example channel. And I'm going to go to files. And for the purposes of this webinar, I added some documents. So the key to remember about the files in your channel are that they are available to everybody who's a member of this channel. So let's see. Everybody who is in a channel, which is actually just me at the moment, has access to all of the files that are here. And so if you're sharing work, this is one way that you can do it, is through the files functionality in your channel. The thing about Microsoft Teams is that it's integrated with all of the Word applications. So for instance, if I click on this PowerPoint presentation, it'll launch the PowerPoint presentation in Teams. And so I can edit this however I want. It's almost completely fully functional PowerPoint. There may be some obscure features that aren't available that would otherwise be available in the installed version, but you don't really have to ever open Word separately or PowerPoint or Excel separately outside of Teams. You can edit all of the documents within Teams within the setting of Teams. If I wanted to open PowerPoint, then up here, if I wanted to take this file and edit it, then I would click on Open in Desktop App, and that would launch the installed version, if I have it, the installed version of PowerPoint on my computer. So this is one way that I might have files with somebody in my department and share them and so on and so forth. One question that I had in registration was about project management in document versions. And I just wanted to show that in Teams, what you can do is to ensure that you don't have people overwriting other people's work, is you can check out a file. So let's say that in this example, I'm working on this document, my example doc, and I want to make sure that nobody's editing it because I'm about to make some changes to it. And so I can go here, or I can go up in this toolbar here, and I can select check out. And what that does is it makes it unavailable to other people in the channel at the moment, so that I can click on this document, I can make changes to it, and other people in my channel and my team won't be overwriting the changes that I make. This also means that people won't be able to make changes to that document until I check this item in. And so after I make edits, presumably in Team, then what I would do is I would check it back in, or in this case, because I didn't make any changes, I would just say discard checkout. So it's just one way of what's called version management or versioning of documents that helps prevent your colleagues overwriting your work. The other thing that every channel has, we've gone through posts, we've gone through files, and then there's notes. And this is a functionality that you might not use. This is actually part of Microsoft's Staff Notebook, which is a particular type of collaboration software. It's mostly geared towards educational professionals, but it's like creating a mini Wikipedia within your department. And so you can, I haven't set it up, you can certainly start doing it. The final functionality of channels that I'm going to go over is this tab here. So adding a tab. This might be the most powerful part of Microsoft Teams, and it's because it allows you to add a lot of functionality, a ton of functionality actually, all in one place. And so, for instance, if I click on this tab, and this might be for advanced users, but it's one of the things that allows you to really extend the functionality of Teams. Is, let's say that there's a document, I'm in my webinar example team, but let's say I was in like my community works collaboration or some, I was working on something and I was working on a document, and everybody in my channel was really concentrating on one particular document. You can add that document to your channel at the very top here. So I did this with one particular Word file. It's the Word file that I brought up before. You can just add it to your channel at the top by clicking Add Tab. And in this case, I selected Word because it was a Word document. And from the files, I selected my example document, and it adds it at the top. So it adds an instantiation of Word, of the Word document in my channel. I've now done this twice. So that's not the only thing that you can do in Teams. In fact, so people were asking about workflow management or project management software. So there's, if you use Microsoft Flow or Microsoft Automate for project management, you would click Flow and you would add it to your channel, and you can actually set up project management within your channel. Or if you use, it's not just Microsoft apps that they have available, like Trello. Trello is another piece of software management, project management software rather. It's a way that you can actually add more functionality to your channel. And so you're not limited to just the things that are listed at the top of your channel. You can customize it quite a bit actually. Okay. So let's just see. Can you organize files into folders? Yes, absolutely. So this is basically like a folder on your desktop or anywhere in Microsoft Explorer. You can create a folder. You can create a file directory, a directory structure, however you want. So there's a question about versioning. Are different versions preserved? And by themselves, rather, without adding that functionality through tabs, there are apps that you can add to your channel that increases its functionality. But no, the versioning, it doesn't say more than I think 1 or 2 versions. It's just a way of preventing overwrite. So if you normally put files into Box, these files, they live in Teams. They live essentially in the cloud in Teams. I'm going to show when we get to files how you can integrate Google Drive, Box, your storage account, your OneDrive, all of the cloud accounts. You can add them to Microsoft Teams so that you can either integrate them with Teams or you can keep them separate. But we'll get to that in just a second. I think this is basically everything that I wanted to touch on in team functionality. There's just one other thing, which is that because Teams segregates or creates groups of people, when you're using it, you can do things like instantly meet with people. So there's this functionality up at the top right of the screen here where I can start a video conferencing. It's like instantly starting a Zoom, except it's Microsoft video conferencing. And I can also schedule a meeting. And scheduling a meeting is just like scheduling a meeting in Outlook. It's, you add the title, you can add who you want to invite to the meeting, and location and everything else. This is basically just integrating Outlook into your in one place with video conferencing, for instance. So you can set up meetings just as you would in Outlook. I'm going to show you one example. So just like in Outlook, you can use Scheduling Assistant to identify who's available when you make meetings. So if in your department you want to set up a meeting, you're trying to schedule with the group of people that you work with, it's all available directly in Teams. You don't have to go back to Outlook or anything like that. And yeah, that is just going to do a time check here. Yeah, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so the activity feed. I'm going back to the navigation bar over here. The activity feed is, I'm not a very popular person on Teams yet, but it's basically your Twitter notification or your Facebook timeline, but for all of your office work. So anytime that you're invited to a meeting, every time that you're mentioned in a channel, anytime that somebody shares a file with you, it will be listed here in your feed. Every interaction that somebody has with you in which you're invited or tagged or in any way identified, it'll show up in your feed. So it's a way to make sure that you're keeping on top of project management stuff or just scheduling meetings and that sort of thing. It'll pop up here in your feed. I'm just gonna, let's see. Okay. And let's go to chat. And again, just like you're using in WhatsApp or you use something in Facebook or Facebook Messenger or any social media application that you have, again, Teams tries to bring it all into one place. And so in the chat here, every time that somebody mentions me, sends me a message, it's identified here. And not only is it identified here, but if, for instance, Sonia has contacted me, I can also, when I'm looking at the messages that that I've been sent, I can look at any files that I've shared with her. At the moment, I haven't shared any, and other information with Sonia, with the person. Again, this is another way to engage the chat functionality. I'm sorry, the call functionality. So I'm going to go to this chat, and the chats are not limited to one person. You can send a chat to a group of people. So in this case, I have a chat here with Sonia and Jacob. I've shared a file in the chat, which is easy to do. And I can also at any point make a video call or an audio call, and I can actually share my screen if we're working on something together at the same time through the chat functionality. So it's a way to identify and communicate with people that you're working on. And yeah, it's not limited to one person or two people. You can add as many people as you want. It's your chat functionality. It's just like social media. It's pretty straightforward. Now going to the navigation sidebar, I'm going to the calendar. And basically this is the functionality that you see in Microsoft Outlook. This is my Outlook calendar. And when you go here, you're going to see your Outlook calendar. You can use, again, the video chat functionality. I can say I'm going to meet now. sort of starts this. I don't want to screw up my screen, but it essentially launches Microsoft's version of Zoom. And so I can create, you don't have to log into Zoom anymore. You can just start a meeting in Microsoft Teams. You don't have to worry about launching a separate application. If I wanted to schedule a new meeting, I would do it from here. And again, this is fully integrated with Outlook and Exchange. So if you make an appointment or if you make a meeting here, it will show up in Outlook and vice versa. This is completely integrated with Outlook and Exchange. I did have a question during registration. Somebody asked about Google Calendar, and is it any easier to sync with Google Calendar? And the answer to that is unfortunately no. Google Calendar doesn't integrate any better. This is effectively Outlook. And so if you have synced your Google Calendar with Outlook, it'll show up here. But you don't have any more control over like the color scheme or the settings in Google Calendar in Teams than you do with Outlook, unfortunately, for better or worse, and at least at this point. There are some third-party apps that you can actually add to Teams, but in some cases they cost money. So the native integration is not the best. So that's Calendar. I want to make sure that we have time for lots of questions. So I'm going to just go on the navigation toolbar to Files. And this is the same functionality that's built into every channel, except in this case, it's all of my files across all of my teams. So these are the files in my team. There's files that I downloaded. And then there's cloud storage. Everybody should be logged into your OneDrive. And so all of the things that are saved automatically in Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or whatever appear in your cloud storage on OneDrive. But also for some of us who are still using other forms of cloud storage, I also have my Google Drive. You can add Google Drive to Teams. Some of you are using Box, and so you might go to, and I breezed over that, but you go down to Add Cloud Storage, and you select Dropbox or Box, and previously Google Drive was listed here before I added it. And so you click this and you add your authentication information, which as usual is your NetID and your password, and then Dropbox or Box or various cloud storage is available there. Now, you can move all of your documents into Teams. So you can take these documents and move them into a particular channel. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. You can keep them where they are. You have access to all of your your cloud storage, whether you want to migrate them into Teams or whether you want to keep them separate. Okay. And yeah, somebody pointed out that Box is going to go away. It's going to go away next year. IT is decreasing the support for Box, and eventually it's going to go away. But you can add it to Teams, and you can eventually migrate it all into Teams through this interface here. Just one more note on files is that when you move files into Teams, the scheme by which you share and you set permissions is by channels. And so, for instance, when I was here and I say, okay, I want to move this PowerPoint presentation into Microsoft Teams, you can't just dump it into a team. You dump it into a channel. Because again, think of channels as a set of permissions for the audience within the channel. So everybody who's in a channel, when I move a document there, is able to see that document. And so that is the sort of the permission scheme. You don't have to explicitly set sharing settings anymore because it's just defined by your channel. Presumably, if you're sharing a document within a channel, you're sharing with everybody in the channel. And the last thing before I take questions is back on the navigation sidebar, I'm going to go to these three dots, which is more added apps. And as I showed in the channels, how you can add apps. You can actually add apps to your sidebar into Teams as a whole here. There's a lot of different apps that you can add to increase the functionality of Teams. You probably don't already have, in my case, a Zoom button on your navigation sidebar. I added it by going to adding this app and typing in Zoom. And previously it said add to Teams, and I added it. Oh, this just went away. And so if you don't want to use the video conferencing functionality, if you're really happy with how you are doing things, or if you are set up so that you just want to keep using Zoom, you can keep using Zoom from within Teams. And so you can add it. You can add this functionality. I want to pin it to make sure it stays there, so that if I'm using Zoom, if you're happy with Zoom and you want to keep using it, you actually don't have to leave Teams in order to use it. You can launch it from Teams. And so all of this functionality is available here. And like so many apps, you can add Zoom functionality within your channel, your Teams. There's lots of different apps. There's a gazillion different apps that you can add. So there's a lot of functionality that you can increase your Teams installation with. Another example is, adding, in some cases, you can add apps right from the conversation bar in a channel. So for instance, let's say, I want, every time that I log in, I want it to mention the weather. Okay. All right, so there's a weather. And so it adds the functionality of the weather app to my channel. That really is, in addition to syncing everything with Outlook and Exchange, the app functionality is the thing that really brings together a lot of the different aspects of Teams. That is the crux of it. I'm gonna go over some questions now. All right, there's a lot. Okay. Okay, let's see. Here's one. It's what, can you add DocuSign as an app? To be honest, I don't know. I mean, the question is whether it's supported, and it doesn't, I'm not sure if any of these applications here are part of DocuSign, but there's Adobe Sign. You can add that functionality. There's certainly other document management apps that are available there. And so, I mean, if your question is, can I use X app? I mean, the easiest way to figure that out is to go to apps and search and see if it's actually there. And there are apps that are being added to Teams all of the time. Let's see. Is it also true with Trello in Teams? I ask because I like Trello and use it. Trello will expire. Well, Trello itself, as I understand it, is not expiring. But it might be that the support by IT is, but until that happens, you can use Trello within Teams. And really, if your question, and I know that a lot of people have, and in the registration, a lot of people had questions about things like, is support for X or Y increasing or decreasing? Is it going to go away? I mean, that's really a decision by IT, and you should ask IT about that. Whether or not the functionality is available within Teams is something you yourself can look up by just searching through the apps. How do you know that somebody has sent you a post or a document in Teams? Well, there's multiple ways, but the easiest way is going to your activity feed. If somebody shares something with you, if somebody sends you a message, it mentions you in a post or in a document, it'll show up in your feed here. I'm not sure if we have the administrative authority to add apps to our work computer or network. I know that there are some limitations that are on us in terms of what we can add and what we can't, but I don't have any special authorization And there's a gazillion pieces of functionality that that are available to me. And so I just, there's an abundance of apps that are available, and I suspect that if IT has locked one, they have done it with good reason. Okay, when you authenticate for adding these apps and features, are you just using your NetID? Yes, you're using your NetID. Unless you're adding a piece of software for which you have your own separate account, everything is accessed and authorized through your NetID. And for people who are using their home computers and haven't installed Teams, you want to, or in fact, any part of Microsoft Office or Microsoft 365, which is the cloud version of Microsoft, the Microsoft suite, you go to portal.office.com and you can log in with your NetID at portal.office.com. Does moving from OneDrive to your files remove them from OneDrive? Yes. If you move them, yes, you can copy them, but you can, but the move functionality removes it from your drive. In some cases, you might want to do that. So if you're migrating from Box because it's going to expire, you want to move all of your files. That would be intentional. Can you block people in Teams? I actually don't know that answer, but I'm going to look that one up. Can you add additional calendars that you have access to in Outlook? The answer is yes. My understanding is that if you have the calendar selected in Outlook, that is what shows up. If they're viewable by you in Outlook, they should be viewable to you in Teams. It's supposed to be seamless integration between the two. Is the chat specific to a team, or does it integrate all chats from all your team's workspaces? Well, your feed integrates all of the different instances in which you're mentioned in a chat. But the chat can be either one that happens in a channel that is available to everybody, or it can be personal and private just between one or two or a group of people. So you can, the answer is both, essentially. Let's see, how does the person being called get notified and how do they pick up? So this is something that I discovered yesterday when I called somebody in my department. They didn't even realize it, but they had a little notification box at the bottom of the screen that said, "You're being called by Jeff Napolitano." And a little notification window will pop up on your computer if you have Teams running. And you can say decline or accept. It's really that simple. Let's see. Sonia or Jacob, are there any questions that you see that that you think are particularly important to go over?
Can you, Jeff, there's a question that is it possible to share?
Is it possible to share what? Sonia? Oh, okay. Sonia got cut off.
Sorry, can you, sorry about that. Can you share your document in a channel, give some people permission to change it and others just to read it, or everybody in the channel? Can you control by person the ability to change a document in a channel?
Have shared with people?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a way to edit a document in SharePoint, in Microsoft SharePoint, if you're familiar with that, to set certain permissions. But generally, no. If you move a file into a channel, it's available to everybody in the channel, and everybody. there may be some question about this if you're sharing this directly from a Google Drive or a box, but generally everybody in the channel has the same permission to access the document as everybody else does in the channel.
If you leave your department, do you lose your team?
That's really a question for the administrator of your team. For instance, in the Partnership for Worker Education, I go to manage team and it shows me the owners of the team, and those are basically the people who have the authority and the ability to grant and revoke access. So here in Partnership for Worker Education, you see actually there are backup bots that are that are made administrators, owners of our team for the purposes of, I presume, backing up all of our documents. There are 3 people in our department that have the ability to add, revoke, limit access to the team, and that's true. And I suspect it's also going to be different. IT has selected who in your department are at least the initial owners of the team and administrators of the team, and so they're the ones who make that decision. Melinda asked, sorry, did not see how you got into the meeting. Maybe the button was behind the thumbnail of the screen. I think you're referring to the calendar meeting, in which case the functionality is up here at the top of the screen on the right. If you're, okay, let's see. My team was using Monday.com and is now looking into Trello and Asana. I have not been using any of them, so to me, Microsoft Teams like it could be used instead of Trello or Box or Monday.com, but you just mentioned that you can integrate Trello or Flow into your channel. Could you clarify? Yeah, so the apps functionality of Teams allows you to use Flow or Trello or whatever. There's a bunch of different management software or workflow management apps that you can install into your team, into your channel. And so really I can't offer you any clarification about which is better or anything like that, but I can just say that they're available to be used within your channel, within Teams. And so Teams itself does not have any native project management software that I haven't shown already. It's all about adding it through the functionality of apps. Teams is just basically like the framework that consolidates, that brings together all of the different apps, all of this different functionality. Is there a workflow management tool in Teams? Yep. Again, I just went over a bunch of them. There's Flow, which is native to Microsoft, and because we are part of Office 365, we all have access to it, and we can fully use Flow and other automation software. Flow, Automate, these are all workflow management software that's available through Microsoft and available to us. It's really just a matter of selecting which one you want to go with and which one you're probably the most familiar with. Maybe I missed it, but does this work with UMass Gmail or just Outlook? It's just Outlook. So this integrates completely into your Outlook and Exchange account within UMass. Is the UMass Zoom account expiring? I don't think so. That's a question for IT, but what Teams strives to do is to make it so that you don't have to launch any other applications. You don't have to have Zoom. It's built into and native to Teams. And so anybody else who's using Teams within UMass has the same ability to video conference without using any other external software.
Jeff, can we talk about privacy? There's a question that is Teams secure to share sensitive data within or between departments?
I'm going to leave that, and I will ask that question of IT. You know, IT has certain standards for sensitive data. So if you're using Box for information for holding files that contain things like social security numbers or even birth dates and some stuff like that, IT has decided that Box is sufficiently secure for that to be used for those files, but Google Drive isn't. And so, to be honest, I don't know if sharing them within channels meets the privacy standards that are established by IT, largely because it's their standards. We're at the hour mark, and maybe so we can just take one or two more questions, and then I assure everybody, particularly those who need to leave, that I will go through all of the questions that are remain unanswered. We will post them and a recording of this webinar on the Partnership for Worker Education website. If you've registered for this, then you will receive an email when that's up, and when the recording is up and when the questions are up. So maybe just one more question. Is it possible to set up the calendar so that my team members can schedule an appointment with me in my calendar? So just like in Outlook, you would go to calendar, and you would, you would click new meeting. And if you created a group, you can add a group to the attendees, and you can add in all this other information. And just again, just as in Outlook, the same functionality as you have in Outlook, you have here in the scheduling software, in the scheduling part of Teams. And in particular, at least for Outlook, for me, what's really useful is having the availability in the scheduling assistant of all the people that you're adding as required attendees or optional attendees. So it's all virtually identical to the functionality in Outlook. Okay, we are going to wrap it up because we're a little bit past an hour. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Sonia and Jacob in particular for helping out with this. I know it might be a little bit frustrating because there are 47 open questions at the moment. I will get through all of the questions, and I will post them on our website, again, along with the recording of this webinar. And if you have any additional questions, you've already received an email from me if you're here. So just send me a question, and I'm happy to add them to the questions that we'll be answering and posting on the website. So with that, thank you very much.